Welcome to After Hours for WEBPT4. My name is Gannon Darcy. I'm one of your project managers. And what we're going to look into is authentication kind of more in the real world. Now, I know we just spent this last sprint learning about authentication, and while the principles that you learned are critically important because it is what will provide context and understanding to authentication documents for third-party applications, by themselves, the skills that you've learned is not all that secure. If you built an app and it was targeted by a dedicated cyber thief, they might win. So because authentication is so mission critically important in the real world, you want to use a third-party app. Now there's a couple different options. Some people use AWS, Cognito, Auth0 is a very, very popular one. Passport's another one a lot of people use. So there's different options. Pick one, get comfortable with it, get to know it, and you'll be all set. In terms of this demonstration, we're going to be using Auth0 because there's a lot to it. It's really, really powerful. It's very well trusted. But there is one thing I want to make sure everybody understands. There is a difference between OAuth and Auth0. Kind of like how there's a difference between Git and GitHub, that kind of idea. So don't get them confused, but know that they go together. Auth0, what we're using, is a third-party API that will handle the vast majority of our authentication needs for us with a fairly minimal amount of code. It does have a bit of a reputation of being very tricky the first time you're going through it. I'm going to do my best to explain it as we go through this application. So what we're going to do to help me whittle everything down to the main bits that you're going to be interested in, we're going to do a basic create React app. And we're only going to import two libraries. I'll show you those in a minute. One of them being Auth0. Nothing else. So we're actually going to handle all of our routing and state management with just vanilla JavaScript, which is good because I know it's been a while since we've touched vanilla JavaScript instead of using just React. So hopefully this will bring back some memories and remind you guys that it's still important to go over your basics as well. Other than that, we'll kind of take it step by step. And if you guys have any problems, I know you're watching this as a recording, DM me, hit me up anytime. I'm more than happy to always go into a Zoom one-on-one and help walk you through it and try and debug a few things. So with that, let me share my screen. Let's go with this. All right, cool. So I'm going to pull up my browser. I'm going to assuming that you're starting with no background. So we're going to make an account together, kind of walk through and explain the main bits and pieces, and then we're going to code our app in React. And like I said, we're going to keep it basic, but it might take about 10, 15 minutes or so to kind of go through it all and get it all scaffolded up. And then we'll actually go through the authentication itself. So if you've never been in, you can sign up. I actually just made a fake little Gmail account to handle this for this demonstration. So we're going to log in with Gmail, Jason Snow, and yes, it is Jason Snow, because that's the level of nerd I'm at now, apparently. Great. All right, so we're in the dashboard. This will show you all the login activity for your various apps. We're going to create an application. We can just keep it at the base name of my app. Now, I told you that Auth0 is really, really powerful. It does a lot of different things. I should get my face out of this video. You can do native apps. You can do the single-page web applications that we are going to do. And you can also do regular applications like with Java and .NET and machine-to-machine applications as well. So while we're going to stick to the main stuff that we've learned so far in the curriculum with single-page apps, there's a lot more for you to dig into when you start to get to more advanced topics. So let's go ahead and create this. And we're going to tell them that we're using React. So here's some more information if you want to play around with like a sample and get to know it better. Their resources are actually really, really good. I highly recommend diving into it on your own time. And as we scroll down, this is one of the libraries that we have, npm install save auth0-js. So you're going to want to throw that in after your create React app is done, because I know it takes forever for a few people to get through with those. All right, so once you have that all up and running, and I have two of these in here because I was doing a practice run prior, we're going to use the most current one. And you see I have a domain, a client ID. This client secret's not too important for you. That's mainly if you're making a server, more of an advanced thing. So don't worry about that. Really, you don't have to worry about much of this. But this allowed callback URL, that one we do care about. And what you're going to see, it's a callback URL is when someone actually clicks login and they're in and they're clear, you're going to want to have a page that is essentially a callback that it will go to after a successful login. Now, often you're going to have it be something like loading or welcome, whatever it is, and then you're going to have that bounce to whatever the home page is for the individual. Now, that might seem a bit ahead of myself right now. You'll really understand what happens as we go through this app. So, as their bit of documentation right here says, we want this to currently be in HTTP, and we're going to have it just be for our local host, and then 3000. And the endpoint being callback. Now, keep in mind, if you are using this for a side project, you're going to want to probably make this HTTPS when you have it set up on Netlify and you have SSH enabled and everything like that. So remember, if you're getting bugs, to come back and edit this whenever you update things in production. But for the sake of this application and this little walkthrough, HTTP is all we need. Let's go ahead and scroll down, save our changes. And we're not going to need this again for a minute, so let's go into the actual code. All right, so we're in here. In the package.json, we have, all right, Auth0.js and JWT code, which is something we might dig into towards the end just to have a little bit of fun with. But the main thing you need is just this one. So if we actually go into this, let's kind of get it started. And give me 1 minute, getting everything situated on my other side. Cool. Let's start with index.js. Now, the first thing that we want to do is we want to initiate and start our state management. Like I said, I know we're going to be doing a little more vanilla JavaScript than you've probably seen in a long time, but most of this should be familiar and a great refresher, so stick with me on it as we kind of knock this out. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's actually call state, and we're just going to set it to an empty object. Empty, there we go. And now we're actually going to do window, and we're going to set the state for whenever there's a change. Changes, arrow function right into, and we're going to have our code be state equal object dot assign. I'm going to assign it to an empty object and bring in state and changes. Now, essentially, this is so that we don't mutate our original state. This will help us fight a lot of errors down the line, just get you set up. Now, the other thing we're going to do is make a little bit of room. And pro tip, if you hold down the Alt key and use your arrow code up, you can actually drag the lines of code. And we're going to need to do a little bit of prop drilling. So this.state, so that way we can access it in the app, because we're going to be adding some other things in here. All right, so now that we got this set up, let's actually build out some initial states. So let initial state equal, and let's just keep it kind of simple. And a name, and let it be, let's just have it be my name. There we go. And then the other thing we're going to do is location. Oh, don't forget in objects to use commas. There we are. So location, boom, location dot path name. Make sure you do replace and not repeat. I did that before, and that bug drove me nearly insane, but now you know. And we're actually going to use a little bit of regex in here. Boom, copy that in. If you need to pause the video to actually really take a quick look at what those characters are, I understand, but that's essentially just to help us out with the routing. All right, and now that we have that set up, let's actually go back to our window and set state to the initial state. Boom. All right, save it, get my terminal up. npm start. Make sure there's no big problems. As we wait 5,000 years, there we go. All right, there we go. So we do have an issue. let's, actually I don't even need this, I already know what it is. So when we use location like this, we get yelled at because we really want to be careful with having these global variables. Now to get around it, all you gotta do is put a comment in. It has to be like this though, with the / ESLint, no dash restricted dash globals at 0, and this will take care of this error. And so this is mainly just because of a React issue where our linter is just screaming at us. But now we're good because we know what we're doing, and this is mainly for demonstrational purposes only. You would handle this a little bit differently with your main app, or you wouldn't have to worry about that because you'll be using React Router. But since this is not a React Router lesson, nor is this a Redux lesson, this is just to focus on Auth0. That's why we're doing it this way. All right, so we're saved and we're good to go. Now let's actually go into our app. Actually, when we were looking at our browser, I'm not a fan of how big this is. So let's go to here, view height, let's trim that down to just 20. And now let's actually go to our app.js. All right, now while we're here, let's also get rid of this A tag, because if I click on that, that's just gonna completely upset me. We're good there. Right below here, we can start to make a component. All right, cool. So what we want to do is create a folder and have it be our components folder. And inside, we're going to make a new one. We're going to call it our main component. All right, cool. Actually, before I forget, this starts out as a functional component. For this, we're going to turn it into a class component. Class app, get rid of that. Extends component. We need to call the render function. And curly bracket, drop the end, wrap everything in, we're good to go there. Cool. And I'm actually going to need to also bring in the component from React there too. Save it. Awesome, no issues. And now what we're going to do, back over here, same thing. Import React component from React. And just give me a brief moment. All right, cool. We're going to export our default as a class, main component, extends. You guys know what time it is. No big issue here. Render function, invoke it, call it, return, and a div. Okay, let's do just some bare minimum styling. It's always good to be able to practice your previous skills with everything that you learned back with HTML and everything like that. So we're going to call this a home page. And do you wish to know the secret of the universe? Seems like a good thing we should probably protect with authentication. And while we're at it, let's make our lives easier. We're going to throw in an A tag so we can bounce around more easily. We're going to make a route for secrets. This is going to be our little secret of the universe. And click here. All right, that should be about all we need for right now. Now let's actually bring that in. For main, components, and main. Cool. Underneath our header, all right, doesn't seem like we have an issue, but let's check our browser. Cool. All right, have our home page. Have we want to know, have this. We're not going to click on it yet because that won't work. Back to the code. Alrighty. So now that we have this, we have our state handled. We have everything else working out pretty well. Now let's handle our routing. We're going to handle that actually with a switch statement. Let me see here. It's going to be inside our rendering. And we'll call it a main component that we're going to have be displayed, and set that to just an empty string for right now. Now our switch would be this dot props dot location. And let's get into our cases. So for the case of an empty string, we're going to want our main component to equal our, you guessed it, main component. And we're also going to want to do some prop drilling for this one in a minute too, so we'll add that in. Self-closing tag, don't forget your break, otherwise that causes some issues. And let's do a case as well for our callback, because I know I referenced that earlier. Our main component will, equal callback that we will have to write as soon as we're done with this. Let's do another case for our secrets. Component equals. We're probably going to end up putting some state in here too. So let's throw that down. We will not need it in our callback. That's just going to be a little loading page, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. And those three should be pretty much all we need. So let's also set up a default. And we're going to make a little not found component too. That should be able to handle anything weird that happens. Alrighty. Double checking. That should be pretty much everything that we need. So let's save it. And as we know, that was going to break it because we obviously are not importing these components because we don't have them. Oh, also let's take that out and actually have it be whatever the main component is. Save that again. All right, so let's just quickly try to build out a few of these components. We're going to have our secret.js. We're going to have our callback.js. And we're going to have our not found.js. All right, cool. Now let's actually go back to main. And we're going to save ourselves some time by copying over just a bit of code. And let's build secret out first. All right, so let's return, close out our render, close out our class. All right, there we go. Oh, and before I actually add anything, let's save time by copying this little template, throwing it into the callback, and throwing it into the not found. Now let's go back. Oh, that's right. We have main in here. So let's make sure these components are named what we want them to be. There we go. All right, let's do just a little bit of styling. I don't want to spend too much time on it. The answer to life. Universe is 42. I might be misquoting it a little bit, but you guys know the joke I'm going for. And then let's actually do that href idea as well, so that way we don't have to waste time. Go return to home page. There we go. That should be pretty much everything that we need. All right. Now let's handle our callback. This one, we'll do another H2, because why not? We'll do loading, dot. It should be pretty much everything we need on this one for now until we actually start to get into the authentication aspect of this. And then not found, I think we're going to follow a similar path of just keeping it pretty simple. But we will add the href in here. So let's go, sorry, not found. But we're going to go to the secret, grab this, go here. There we go. Make sure we saved everything. And we have to import it now. Secret from, there we go. Import callback. Oh, I don't think I actually did that right. Let's fix that. Yep, still called main. All right, good catch. Save it, and same thing for this one. There we go. All right, now we're good. Okay, let's try this again. All right, what's going on line 23? You might not like that. Okay, let's see here. What are we doing wrong on this? Oh, duh. Helps if I actually say main component equal. There we go. Simple fix. What's a tutorial without a couple bugs? All right. Boom. Now, in theory, this works. Hey, all right, cool. We got our secret. Now let's go back. Awesome. And let's see. Not found. All right, cool. Everything's going exactly the way it should be. Back to our home page. So everything there is all set. We have our state done. We have our routing done. I think we have enough boilerplate up to move into the actual authentication itself. So not in components, actually in SRC, inside source, we're going to make an auth.js file. All right. So some of this is going to be a little weird. Give me a minute to type it all out, and I'll try and go back and explain it all as best as I can. So this is where we're actually going to import Auth0 from Auth0. Where's the JS? There. Oh, form. Yay. Good there. All right. Export default class. I'm going to call it auth. And now this is where I said it's going to get a little weird, but it'll quickly be clarified exactly what's going on. New Auth0. And we're going with web. Domain. All right, now this page is the reason why we had to go in and create an Auth0 account. Because what this page does, it's essentially just a wrapper to interact with the Auth0 API. And with that, let's go here, check in. And now I said, this is the application that we have. This is how we're going to be able to communicate to Auth0, hey, the authentication I'm calling you in for, this is what I want it to be for. So we're going to go ahead and copy our domain name. Now remember, this is an object, so don't forget your quotation marks and don't forget your comma at the end. And there's going to be about 5 to 6 things we're going to throw in here. A client ID. Be very careful with your capitalization. It is lowercase client, but it's a capital I and a capital D. I've made that mistake way too many times. Copy this. Boom, comma, our redirect URI. And this is actually going to be the callback that we made. So again, this is a common place where a lot of people run into bugs when they're developing locally and then they want to push it to production. They forget to change these things. So if you're saying, all right, cool, I've built out my site, I'm done with localhost, let's go to Netlify or whatever site that you choose to use. You have to edit it on the Auth0 dashboard, and you have to edit it on this auth.js page. If you forget even one of them, it's going to be a bad day. So try to keep this one in mind. It will save you from pulling your hair out. Okay, we might use this later on for a little bit of extra credit. And HTTPS, yes, I'm very aware we want to have the S in there. And we're going to use this domain. There we go. And we're going to use it to gather some user info. So this is just going to be an endpoint that we're going to use. And we'll talk about this more later if we get around to it. And our response, nope, not node, type. Token and ID token. And then scope, open ID, and we're going to throw profile in as well for some of the extra credit too. All right, so to understand what this is, the response type, it's for, I know we went over this in our curriculum. You guys should know all about JWTs, JSON Web Tokens. These are the tokens that Auth0 is going to give us. This is the response that we're going to get. This is the actual, we don't need the ID token. That's going to be used for the little bit of extra credit that I'll do at the end, but you do need the word token. Just like with scope, you're going to need open ID. Now to tell you what scope is how, and this is more an advanced level thing that you can read about in their documentation, but it's how you can determine who gets different permission levels. So let's say you're building an app and you have employees, managers, and admins, and you want each of those levels to have different permissions in whatever app you're building. The scope is essentially how you would handle and manage that. But for right now, we're not going to deal with different types of users and things like that. That's more of an advanced topic. So we'll leave it just like this. All right. Now let's create a couple of methods. A constructor. And let's do the login itself. All right, so the constructor is just so we can bind the login. So this dot login is equal to this dot login. Whoops. Dot, as I struggle to type, bind to this. There we go. And now we can be able to use this inside of our login method. And so let's knock that out. So this dot auth0 dot authorize, and make sure you invoke it. This should be about what we need for right now. So we'll save this file. And now we're going to need to go back to our index.js and actually bring in and use a lot of the stuff that we just made. So here, give me 1 second to get myself situated over here. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to need to import it so we have access to it. So import auth from /, there it is. Now const lowercase a is going to be a new auth with an invocation. All right, cool. So we got all that set up, and because we did our prop drilling, that's going to be fine down there. The only other thing we need to do is actually throw it into our initial states. And see if we get yelled at. Nope, we're good. Everything's looking good there. All right, cool. So now let's actually go into our main component. And we're going to build out a little login button. And that way you can see, like, most of the code we've written has been boilerplating, so you actually have an application to see how Auth0 works. Now you saw how basic it was. Now watch, with really essentially just this file and the couple lines of code I wrote in here, how much power and use we're about to get out of this. So in main, let's just create a little button. So I'm going to make another div. Boom. And for a little bit of styling, let's give it a horizontal line. And tell our user, hey, you want to log in first. little break. And then we're going to actually create the button. And we're going to keep that styling pretty much on a minimum. So on nope, on click, let's have this props auth login. Cool. Close it out and call it login. That's pretty much all that we'll need. No, let's actually make it a little more friendly. Give it an H3 and also say hello. And since we have the name on state, just that props.name. All right, let's see. Oh, all right, other thing. I have a div and a div. React doesn't like when you have two things on the same level. So watch, I'm actually gonna break this. Yep, and it's gonna yell at me. So we're going to use a fragment. Take care of that. All right, cool, we're good. Let's check it out. Alrighty, so log in, let's click our button. Boom, all of this is being done for us. Don't worry about these 404 errors, they're supposed to happen. And also I want you to remember what I mentioned earlier with that domain. Notice how my name is in here. That could really, really sketch somebody out if you're making a production level app for the real world. When you first build your account, now I know I already had one built, so you didn't get to see this part, but it's very obvious when you first make your account, when you register for it, it's going to ask you for a tenant domain. Whatever you put in there is going to be viewed here. So if you're just doing this to kind of mess around, learn some stuff, or you're doing it even for labs or Lambda project, you have in your name or something like that is perfectly fine. But if you're building an app that you intend for real people to use, do not do that. If you have like a company name or an app name, whatever it is, I would try to throw that in there instead because it is far less likely to make people go, whoa, what's going on here? All right, that little bit aside, let's log in with Google. And we'll use my fake JSON Snow account, authorize it. Like I said, all of this functionality, all of the security is, there we go, is coming in. I'm unauthorized. Awesome. Let's take a quick look here. What's going, oh, it might be because I'm using a bad account. So let's see here. See if I can back out a little bit. It's gonna yell at me, but let's try a different account. All right, hold on. Let me pause this, figure out what I broke, and we'll get right back into it. Okay, so pro tip, make sure that your redirect URI doesn't have 3 T's in it, because that will apparently make it take forever to redirect, and when it finally does, it gives you an error. Who would have thought? So now that we figured out what that bug was, let's retest this out. So we're gonna log in with Google, JSON Snow, and boom, it took us to our callback route. Now again, this loading is just text that we have hard coded out, but something I want you guys to notice is look inside this URL. It has your access token, it has when you expire, it has all sorts of information in there. So what we are going to want to do next is take a lot of the information that is in this query and put it into local storage so we can view it kind of better. And we might actually even put one of those tokens into jwt.io. So that way it can decode it for us and we can kind of see what we're working with a little more. So with that, let's actually kind of dive into that a bit. All right, so we're gonna go back to our auth.js file and we're gonna make 2 more methods. Let's do handle, whoops, capitals, and authentication. And let's also do is authenticated as well. All right, so for handling authentication, this is how we're going to get a lot of information out of that URL, and we're gonna kind of put it into our local storage. So let's do this dot auth0 parse hash, and in case there's an error, and then our authorization results. Now these are names that I'm choosing. You could do foobar, banana on these, it doesn't matter, but they're just more intuitive. And let's arrow into, let's see here. We want to be able to handle the information that's in the URL, which means the first thing we're going to want to do is check that's actually there. So if there are results and the auth results have the access token and the auth results have an ID token. Because if we don't have those, then we're not going to want to handle the authentication. Makes pretty good sense. So let's see here. We're actually going to also deal with that expire token as well. And we're going to turn it into a JSON, stringify it, and then do the auth results. That expires in. Let's multiply it out by 1,000 to make it more readable. New date, dot, and get the time. So I know this is stuff that you guys kind of already taught when dealing with JWTs, how you're given an access token, but those have a short timer on them. You know, it could be a few minutes, it could be almost up to an entire day, and then it expires. So we're going to want to be able to know about that expire information, because when it expires, we have a refresh token, and that will give us a new access token so we can continue to use the service. And as you guys know, that refresh token is long-term, but it can be revoked. You know, that's how if we signed up for a subscription service, we unsubscribed, they would automatically revoke that refresh token. But before we get too much in the weeds on this, let me continue to code this out. But that kind of explains what we're looking at and what we're trying to do. All right, so share that. We're letting that happen. So now let's actually put it into the local storage. So local storage dot set item. Let's see what the access token is. And then call it the access token. And we know we're going to have it, otherwise we can't get to this block of code. And to save me some typing, I'm just going to duplicate this 3 times. And we're going to switch this from access to the ID, and we're going to switch this one to the expires at. Expires at. Then make sure this mirrors lowercase ID, and we're going to actually bring in that expires at. Make sure you do the at, not expires in. We're going to call that in right there. All right, cool. And now we're actually also going to do a location hash and set that to an empty string. So this is actually what will allow us to get all the info from the query string from the URL. And then location dot path name, because we actually want to go somewhere when we're authenticated. And to help make this a little clearer, I'm actually going to set this up with a constant page. Whoops, there we go. And I'll set that in a second. While we're on this, let's do an else if, because we could have an error. Let's set that location dot path name to be a login failure page. And actually, if we're dealing with errors, we usually want to console them out. Console log them out. All right, let's deal with these. Let's actually call these out. So where do we want to go? I'm going to say if our login is successful, let's go right to our secret. So const login successful. Let's go to our secret. Then const login failure. Let's boot them straight to, I like to keep it the same. Yeah, our home page will do. All right. Now, remember, we're dealing with using location, so we might get yelled at again and have to use that comment that we used in our index.js. But let's wait and test that out. So now let's actually be able to tell if we are authenticated or not. All right, so with that one, let's see here. We're in a different scope, so we're going to need to remake this one. Expire at, JSON again, parse again. We're gonna do local storage right off the rip. That get item and expires at. Turn new date. That get time. Invoke it. And it should be less than the expires at. So what this line of code is doing, it might seem weird, but it's intuitive after I explain it. We're trying to say, hey, are we actually authenticated or not? And what we're able to do is with the JSON parse, we look inside of our local storage at expires at, which we just wrote up in the handle authentication. That's going to give us time. We just talked about that. If our current time is less than what the expired at time period is, then we know we're authenticated because we're within that token. If it's greater than whatever expires at is, then we know we're not. Actually, wait a minute. Where'd that? Oh yeah, I want to make sure that's about right. Then if we're over that, then we're not within the token. The token's expired, and we're not authenticated. So this is a good way for us to be able to see that kind of stuff. Save it. And all right, yeah, so we are getting that again. So let's go ahead and grab, there it is, ESLint, no restrict. Let's go ahead and just throw it right under here. All right, cool. And what's not assigned? That should be fine. Hold on 1 second here. Oh, wait a minute, I see what's going on. We put a dot. We don't want that, we want that. There we go. Actually, wait, so we don't want auth results at all. There we are. Now we should be good. Awesome, cool. Cleared that. Cool, cool, cool. So we got all of our new handlers in. Let's go ahead and pull up our browser. Let's refresh this page. And let's see here. Actually, you know what? We're going to do is let's walk through it again. Go through our console, log in. Google. JSON. All right, we're back at our callback. And where'd it go? Oh, here it is, application. And let's take a look here. Huh, not showing up. Let's take a look at why. Oh, wait a minute. We're actually not even using this anywhere. All right, we actually have to go into our callback. And we're going to use it for a component did not. There we go. All right, and we're going to do const auth equals new auth. Down, there it is. Invoke it, and we're going to have to import auth, which we did, so we're good there. There we are. Whoop. Wrong thing. There we are. Hey, now we're populated. Awesome. So all of our code works. Now we have our access token, we have our ID token, and we know when it expires at. Cool. Now let's go through the next step. I think the best bet for that is let's make this a little more dynamic. So we'll pull up our code. And if you're logged in, it doesn't make sense to have a login button around. So we'll go back to our main component. And let's actually add in a little bit of code around the second div. All right, let's do if not this props auth is authenticated, invoke it, and what we're going to do is actually just drag all of this up in there. There we go. That should work. Let's test our theory. Boom. So we know that we're authenticated because we can see our tokens in here. And now we're back on our home page and there's no login button. All right, that makes sense. However, as you may have realized, how can we get out of it? Because we don't have the ability to log out. So let's go ahead and create our log out functionality. And the main way that you're going to handle logging out, you just have to tell your browser to forget about these tokens, which is actually pretty simple. So let's go back to Auth0 and scroll down a little bit. And actually, you know what? I don't even think we're going to need to handle it in here. I think we can handle, nah, we will. We will. Let's do it in here. Let's do another function, another method. Let's do log out. And all we're going to do is go to our local storage, remove an item, and access token. We're just going to remove all three of them. ID. And expires that. And then we need to be directed, and that's the whole reason we made location dot path name. We're going to set that equal to the login failure. Boom. Everything there should work. Now we actually need to put the button in somewhere though. So let's see, where would we want to be able to put our button? I think we're going to put it, since we're on success, going to the secrets page, that probably makes sense to put the button there. So let's go ahead and pull that up. And we're not going to do anything too crazy. Let's actually just make a simple button. Click. This dot props dot auth dot, let's call it the logout method we just wrote. Log out. Save that. Boom. And we have a nice little log out button. See what happens when we hit it. Hey, everything's gone. And we got kicked out just like we were supposed to. And we're good. Cool, cool, cool. But here's the thing. The whole kind of reason we just went through all this was so we can have login, log out functionality, but right now, nothing's protected. I just kind of get in here. We want to be able to protect this route and make it so you have to log in to be able to access it. So let's go over that next. And the best way we're going to do that is close this down. Let's go to our routing in app.js. And we're just going to do a little bit of logic right here. So for secret, let's have it be this dot props dot auth dot, and this is another reason why we had our are we authenticated? Now, if true, go ahead and give us the secret. If false or falsy, we're going to go to our not found page because I don't feel like making another component. All right, cool. Let's double check. Are we protected? Hey, we are. Now, if we log in, Mr. Snow. All right, do you see how that loading screen flashed for a second? That was our callback. And then it redirected us right to our secret, which means everything worked. Boom. Login button's not there. I'm able to go and see the secret. I'm able to log out. My tokens disappear. And we have everything that we need done. So, like I said, bit of a bumpy ride. There's a reason why a lot of people are intimidated by authentication with third-party servers, because there is a bit of a learning curve. I hope that this is at a basic level covered a lot of the stuff, because I couldn't think of a way to make it more basic than leaving out every other type of thing like React Router. Oh God, I've been at this for so long. What's the other word? Redux. I'm just thinking about ours. It's all just equals to React. So while leaving out all that extra complexity, at bare bones, predominantly just using vanilla JS, this is full blown as you would expect it to work on a legit site like Facebook or Google authentication, and it's highly, highly protected behind the scenes. If you want to learn more, go into Auth0's documentation. They have a ton of stuff, and honestly, they have some really, really, really cool things. I mean, you can do everything with passwordless authentication. You can do magic links, so you can send out emails to people that can grant them authorized access to certain things on a website. You can do multi-factor authorization. Yeah, that's the type of thing where you try to log in, it pings your phone with a code, you have to enter in the code. Like, you can do a lot. So I try to whittle this down to as much bare bone basics as I can with as minimally easy, accessible code as possible. And I hope that this is able to make sense and be really, really helpful to you guys. If you need to go through this video more than once, or you need to reference other videos other than this, that's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. This is usually a topic you need to learn 2 to 3 times before you get really, really comfortable with it. And bugs are expected. It happens all the time. So with that, let's actually get a little crazy with it. Let's do that little bit of stretch that I was telling you guys about and why we made some of that extra code. Actually, you know what? I had this up for a reason. Let me actually show you why. We're gonna log back in. Google. Jason. And let's grab the ID token. Copy it. Now, JWT.io, great, great resource. Let's break it down. So you can see what type of token it is in the header. It's a JWT, the type of algorithm being used, honestly, the key ID. But here's the payload. Now, the reason we have access to this, my name, my last name, my nickname, like everything, all this information, is because in our code, we put in, where'd it go? This word profile. That's getting the profile information from this Google account, which means we can use it to have a really, really cool user experience. And I'll show you what I mean. I told you guys how we're using 2 libraries. So far, we've only used one. We just used the Auth0-JS. The other one is this thing called JWT Decode. So download that, pause the video, and then come back to us. And now that that's done, let's go back to auth.js. We're going to make one more thing. We're going to call this get profile. Invoke it, call it, and now if in local storage, whoops, not log out, local storage, get item, and we're going to grab that ID token. Again, this is the main reason why we had the ID token in the beginning. Everything we've done so far, you could have just did with the word token, right there. This ID token is giving us access to this profile stuff. And if we have that, then return JWT decode. Wait a minute, I have to import it. JWT decode from JWT decode. There we go. That should screw with me less. There we go. All right. We're going to go into our local storage. And where is get item? Right there. We're literally mirroring what we wrote above. And else, we'll just return. We'll do an empty object because I can't wreck anything in theory. All right, so now we're able to return and get all that information that I showed you from jwt.io and actually use it in this app. And just to keep it kind of light, what we'll do is we'll go into our index.js. And let's just use the person, whatever the person's username is. I think that would be good. Let username equal auth.the get profile that we just made. Invoke it without a 0. And given underscore name. Otherwise, we'll say grab the name. And this is just to make it easier for me to see if this works or not. All right, and now inside of our initial state, let's get rid of Gannon and call in the username. That should work. We're gonna save it. All right, no issues there. Pull this up, back to, and I may have misspelled something. And no, didn't misspell anything, but for some reason I put a this in there. That's not necessary. Delete that, save it. All right, cool. Now we seem to be good. We're logged in. We see our tokens. And it's saying hello Jason instead of Gannon or the other test information. So we're actually pulling in the person's username that's on their Google profile. You can kind of quickly get an idea of how incredibly useful that can be in a variety of ways to create a very custom, comfortable feeling, or really creepy depending on how you view it, what type of users you have. But very, very useful and very easy to do with Auth0 as well. And that can work. We just use Google, but you can use Facebook, LinkedIn, GitHub, a bunch of different services. We just only chose to use the Google one for this demonstration. So that is now truly everything. That's our bare bone basic stuff. That's our little bit of fancy stuff here at the end. If you guys have questions, and I know this is a common thing, especially since you have labs coming up, every single labs project uses Auth0 for the most part. So you are going to need to play around with this. And I highly recommend going through this tutorial, maybe do it once or twice, making a simple app, add to it, make it a little more unique, flesh it out a little more than I did. And try other tutorials as well. There's quite a few out there. Some are really good, some are not, but it is what it is. All right, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. This has been a fun after hours, and I'll talk to you all again soon in class. Bye.